What would you buy if money was no boundary? How about a diamond-encrusted car, or even a pigeon worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Well, billionaires from around the world have already purchased such things, and I'm sure they still have more than enough cash left over to last them a lifetime. Number 9. The most expensive pigeon ever. How much would you spend on a pigeon? Alright, crazy question, I know. It's more likely you'd pay to get rid of one of these projectile-pooping birds. It may then come as a surprise that back in 2013, $400,000 was spent on one by Chinese businessman Gao Fuxin. As surprising as it may seem, pigeon racing is a very lucrative sport to get involved in. Enthusiasts will spend a lot of money on prized pigeons that can travel the furthest distances in the shortest amount of time. Former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson even competes. He got into the sport after a bully pulled the head off his pet pigeon, and now he owns a huge collection of them. Auctioned in Europe by a Belgian breeder, the $400,000-year-old pigeon was being offered for a relatively high price, and plenty of people from various countries were bidding for it. But Gao stole away the auction with his bid of about $400,000. He plans on using it for breeding more racing pigeons and auctioning them off. The prices for these pigeons have doubled in China in the last few years, and I'm sure that Gao will make his money back rather quickly. He'll probably have enough left over to buy himself a few more pigeons. Number 8. Visible from space. One Arab sheikh decided to literally leave his mark on the world, and it's something you can't quite miss. Hamad bin Hamdan Al Nahyan decided to write his name in the sand so large that it can be viewed from space. He came up with the idea to sketch his name in the sand on the island of Al Futasai. It was definitely a work in progress. It took his men many weeks to create this large piece of graffiti that measures 1,000 meters high and 2 miles long. The piece was so well thought out that Hamad even made sure his name would never be erased, but instead the letters would form waterways that absorb any approaching tide. Hamad, also known as the Rainbow Sheik, has always been a lover of luxurious things and making a statement. With a fortune only second to the Saudi king, Hamad is thought to have over 200 cars, the world's largest truck, and even a motorhome that's shaped like the Earth, and 1/1,000,000th of the size of it. While Hamad is sure to have made a statement with this large graffiti, it's only a matter of time before he comes up with something on an even more grand scale. Number 7. One-of-a-kind haircut. We all have our preferences when it comes to our own hair. Some will only have trusted stylists touch their hair. Some will only cut it themselves, and some will shell out the big bucks to ensure they get the haircut they want. When it comes to the latter, the Sultan of Brunei, Haji Hassan al-Bolkiah, did exactly that. The Sultan spent about $21,000 on his haircut, enough to pay most people's rent for a couple years. There's usually only one person who's allowed to cut the Sultan's hair, and that person is none other than Ken Modestau, who is the owner of a salon in the Dorchester Hotel in London. It's not unusual for Ken to fly out to cut the Sultan's hair. He actually does this about every 3 to 4 weeks, making sure Ken is taken care of. The Sultan usually provides Ken with a first-class seat that sits at a price of about $14,000. Everything is paid for Ken, whether it's the luxury food or the hotel that he stays at. The reason for the exceptionally higher price tag of $21,000 was because there happened to be an outbreak of swine flu amongst the passengers of Singapore Airlines. Because of this, the Sultan wanted to ensure that Ken would stay healthy, so he arranged for him to travel in a private suite. Number 6. Touch of gold. For many people, flying can be a somewhat uncomfortable task. When you take into account the long waiting hours, the cramped seating, and the limited legroom, it makes sense why some people dread the thought of flying. Topping this list once again, the Sultan of Brunei, Hassan al-Bolkiah, doesn't have to worry about the problems of flying economy class anytime soon. Actually, he doesn't even need to worry about flying first class either, and that's because he has his own personal jet. You're probably wondering what's so special about a private jet. Don't most billionaires have one? While they may have one, how many have one with a gold and crystal interior? Hassan spent around $100 million just to purchase the Boeing 747-430, and then he spent an additional $120 million just to make sure the plane has a luxurious interior fit for a sultan, comprising of golden walls and wash basins made of gold and Lalique crystals. I'm sure anyone who enters this jet will be shocked by how glamorous it looks. The Sultan has a rather extensive collection of aircrafts, which include 2 Airbus A430s and a 767, but the Boeing 747-430 is his largest and most extravagant aircraft to date. Number 5. Dream car. Have you ever dreamed of having a fancy car? What about a diamond-encrusted Mercedes? If that sounds a bit unbelievable, I don't blame you for thinking so. But it actually does exist, and the proud owner of it is none other than Prince Alawid bin Talal. He's even rumored to charge people $1,000 just to touch the car. Yet, the private office of Prince Alawid bin Talal has stated that the prince does not and has never owned a diamond-encrusted Mercedes. It's said that the car was actually a Mercedes-Benz SL600 that was covered in 300,000 gold shadow crystals and designed by a Japanese automotive accessories company in Japan. But this claim has to be taken with a pinch of salt because the prince has come under fire before for his wealth, and it's likely just an attempt to understate his extravagance. What do you think? Is it actually the prince's car, or just part of an auto show? Either way, this car holds a hefty price tag. Number 4. Living in luxury. The richest man in India, Mukesh Ambani, built a home that's worth over $1 billion, and is definitely a home built for a king. Located on Altamount Road in South Mumbai, this building reaches an impressive 4 million square feet and towers over the city. While the building is technically only 27 stories because of its double-height ceilings, it actually reaches a height of almost 40 stories. It's no surprise that with that size of a home, it contains plenty of room for guests and staff, and even contains an entourage room where security and bodyguards can rest. In fact, the building contains over 600 staff members. While there may be plenty of staff in the building, apparently the kids still have to clean up their own rooms when they're home. Besides the rooms where guests, family, and staff can relax, this building also contains a health spa, a salon, a ballroom, a private theater with seating for 50, 3 swimming pools, yoga and dance studios, and 6 stories of parking. It seems as though you'll rarely need to leave the home. The family lives on the very top floor of the building, and the reason for that? They wanted sunlight, and the top rooms are the best for that. Number 3. The Secrets of Da Vinci. Bill Gates has such a vast fortune it must be difficult to find things worth buying with it. That's probably why he spends so much of it on benefiting the world through his philanthropic efforts. In the 90s, though, he saw an investment that he wanted to make, and he was going to pay anything to achieve it. Gates has always had a love for anything that challenges his mind, and so it's no surprise that he was drawn to a certain multitasker from the past. During an auction in 1994, a journal was put up for auction, and it happened to be none other than the work of Leonardo da Vinci. Gates had his eye on the journal, otherwise known as the Codex Leicester, and willingly spent $30.8 million to learn the secrets that da Vinci had left behind. Gates explained that he was drawn to the journal because of the inspiration that is the person who created it. That no matter what, with no feedback on whether what he was doing was correct, he kept pushing himself. If you wish to view the journal, the British Library has a digitized version which shows off Da Vinci's fluid drawings and the inner workings of his mind. Number 2. Clock in a cave. Collecting clocks and watches is a rather popular hobby, but the billionaire in this example takes it to another level. And if you thought the anonymous bidder who bought this $24 million Patek Philippe Super Complication pocket watch was being extravagant, then think again. Imagine something even more complicated and complex than a Super Complication watch, and what you'll arrive at is the project undertaken by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, who is funding a clock housed within a cave. There's no set date for when the clock will be completed, but once it's finished, it will be open to the public for everyone to view. The project is inspired by the Clock of the Long Now, which was thought up by Danny Hills in 1986. The idea was to create a mechanical clock designed to keep time perfectly for 10,000 years, hence its name, the 10,000-year clock. You can still view this prototype at the Science Museum in London, but 2 more recent prototypes exist at the Long Now Museum and store at Fort Mason Center in San Francisco. Jeff Bezos' Bezos Expeditions is funding a similar technical project costing upwards of $42 million, and his clock is being created 500 feet down into a Texan mountain that Bezos himself owns. We don't know how long it will take, but we're sure that this clock in the cave will be a sight to behold and will be able to keep time for thousands of years to come. As to why he's doing this, Bezos explains that it's essentially a clock to keep us humble. The clock reminds us that we're small in the grand scheme of things, and that most of our lives will last at the very most a fraction of 1% of the aspirational life of the clock. Number 1. A painting worth a fortune. Spending a large amount on a painting isn't anything new, especially in the world of billionaires. Painted with skillful hands and hard work, many people want their homes to be adorned by wonderful works of art. You may have even spent a pretty penny on a piece of artwork that you loved, but would you ever buy one that was worth over $150 million, even if you were a billionaire? That was the price of one of Picasso's paintings known as Le Rêve, which billionaire investor Stephen Cohen purchased in 2013. Le Rêve is an oil painting created by Pablo Picasso in 1932, and it portrays a portrait of his 22-year-old mistress, Marie-Therese Walter. Cohen actually had to wait about 6 years after purchasing the painting, as it had to be restored after the original owner, Stephen Wynn, put his elbow through it. The restoration team clearly did a great job, as the painting also hopped up from $139 million in 2006 to $155 million in 2013. But that happens to not be the only piece of expensive artwork that Cohen had purchased. He also bought a sculpture of a preserved shark in a tank by the artist Damien Hirst, and it happened to be titled The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living. While the art has been showing signs of deterioration, its value is still continually going up. It's clear Cohen has an art collection to be envious of.